Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. I'm thrilled to welcome the multi-talented Dianne Doan to the show. Dianne is a talented actress who brings depth and authenticity to every role she's taken on. You might recognize her from her captivating performances in shows like Warrior, where she portrays the character Mai Ling, a complex and dynamic figure in the world of martial arts and organized crime. She discusses her journey growing up in Abbotsford, British Columbia, where she honed her skills as a dancer. Dianne shares how she integrates her dance background into acting, which brings a unique blend of movement and emotion to her performances. I love sharing a small Mulan connection with Dianne as she played the daughter of Mulan, Lonnie, in Disney's The Descendants. I love that she shared memories of her youth watching the animated feature Mulan and the impact the character has had on her life. From her insights into the making of Warrior to her experiences in the entertainment industry, I'm inspired by the incredible Dianne and truly enjoyed this conversation. My favor as usual is to please share this podcast with others, and it would also mean so much if you would rate and leave me feedback. If you would like to help keep this podcast going and support the work I do, visit my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to make a donation. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Dianne. Nice to have you on the show, finally.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on today.
Oh my goodness. Well, obviously, we will get to Warrior and chat all of things that's on the mind lately. But I have to say, I'm really excited because we have a little Mulan connection.
Oh my gosh.
And I just thought it was so much fun that you played Lonnie, of course, who's the daughter of Mulan and Shang, which, which is a little weird because then it's kind of like, oh, or, you're like my daughter, which is fun.
It's so crazy because that little tidbit I really had no idea. And it was right before our Zoom where we had initially met. And Langley told me, I was going to say Hoon, but Langley kind of gave me a heads up. And right before we were going on, I was freaking out. I'm like, wait, what? So that is so, so cool. And I'm like forever proud. Any kind of relation I have to Mulan and that story is like just bonkers to me. That and Bruce Lee. I mean, there's so many things in my life that I'm just like, who would have thought? But I think that is so cool. I mean,
I love it.
I don't know if you remember, but I was freaking out to meet you. When I wanted to hear all about it.
Freaking out, but Langley also.
I was internally.
He was probably like really talking it up. I don't know what he said pre-roll. Like right when I entered the room, you're like, oh, and then Langley's all like, I told her all about you. I'm like, what does that mean? But he's the sweetest, though.
You did all the action.
Yeah. So like a million years ago, I basically am in Orlando, and our Kung Fu school, we do a lot with Disney. So we did like the grand opening for the Epcot China Pavilion in like the 80s. So we worked together a lot. And then when they were working on the film, the animation team at that time was Orlando based. So we were here in Orlando, and we went over there to do some work with the animators, show them Tai Chi, get them into like the whole ambiance, the mood. And then, the producers and Mark Henn, who's the lead animator, was still looking for like the face of Mulan and kind of the action. And when I walked in, I was like a teenager at the time. So it was like the right age and the right time. And he just loved that I did martial arts. And so he brought me in to just do all of the action as well as like character drawing. So I went to the animation studios a lot. And
wait, Langley didn't say character drawing. So wait, I'm sorry. Mulan is based. You are Mulan.
Yes.
That, he just said the action, and I already thought that was amazing. And I'm like, wait, really?
Yeah. So he used my likeness, I guess you call it, for the character, and then I also did all the video. So like the credits, because you know Disney, you work with Disney, but the credits are like martial arts video reference. But like I worked with Mark Henn on all of the like he drew me, and then also videoed sequence because it wasn't motion capture. Did all the action stuff, so I choreographed all of that. It was actually my cousin that was Shang, and they drew him for it, and and then we did the fighting, which was why I was super awkward when, Mulan 2, they're like, oh, they're getting married. I'm like, ugh, it's my cousin. But yeah, so we did that back in the day in the 90s, and it was so much fun. But it lasts forever, which is what I was going to ask you about, which is like, the Disney characters is so evergreen, and it's just this long lasting thing, and it's stuck with me all these years. So I do Comic Cons because of it, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, it's pretty wild.
Wait, I just want to say I'm kind of notorious because I get extra nervous and insecure, not insecure, but when I look people up. So I don't like to, like, I want to hear it from you firsthand. And that's just how I like to work. There's been instances in Hollywood, it's Hollywood, where they're like, you didn't look me up. I'm like, no, but I'm so glad I didn't, because I just loved hearing how your story and your experience and like your face. You're Marvel. I have Velcro running shoes in the second grade that were Mulan, and I was so proud because we never got like fancy shoes growing up, and they were my pride and joy. And that is crazy that was you. And a few years ago, I worked with Dianne Doan, and when I met her, I was like dying. I was just dying. I didn't know how to. I'm sure people bring it up to her all the time, but I didn't know when when was appropriate. Being like, well, now we're working together, and it's this weird, I'm not meeting you in a different circumstance, but this is so fun. Yes. Mulan, it was such a, to wrap it kind of back up, such a pivotal experience for me as an actor coming from Vancouver. And I originally auditioned as a dancer for Descendants. I grew up dancing, and I was a professional dancer in Vancouver. And I didn't even know that they were doing I didn't know that Lonnie, or Mulan's child, would be a part of the Descendants franchise. But I just remember asking, like, in what world would there be an opportunity for me in this movie? And lo and behold, Lonnie came along, and that kind of like was my first big role that kind of got me started in the industry. And it got me my visa, my work visa, to come down to the States. So I'm like forever grateful for Disney and Descendants and what it's done for me and where I am today. So, and it all was Lonnie, like Mulan, which is just wild to me.
I know.
Like, my 20-something birthday, I can't remember which number. I'm also not going to divulge which number. My sisters got me like a Dairy Queen ice cream cake, because those are my favorite, with like Mulan.
I love it.
That's how big of a, an impact that movie had on me. It was like arguably the first relatable character that I saw myself on screen. And I think for a lot of young girls as well.
Yes.
And to carry on that kind of that legacy, and that's so weird to say, but a lot of young women come up to me today being like, they were 8 and now they're 18, which is wild to think about, but, or 16. Let's not say it's that old a movie, but just to say that, Lonnie was someone that they looked up to watching Descendants, which is just, really special, really special.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you hear it too. All the time.
Definitely. And it's a much older film than your Descendants film.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But it's so cool because I feel like I said, it's so evergreen, but like to have that connectivity. And I really loved what you shared, even though you've heard it. And like you said, you get to have the opportunity to speak with people that it's really made such an impact on. Because I always tell people when they ask me about the Mulan thing, like, well, she's the first Disney princess that didn't need saving and was the one that like saved everyone beyond the fact that you could see yourself as, an Asian representation, like beyond that alone, like that was huge. But like just the empowerment of the change in the female characters that Disney started to then put out, and that just showed no more damsel in distress, right? It became like
exactly
new generation. And I think for a lot of us, myself included, like it was kind of a weird thing to be involved in it, but then to see it and then just still feel that impact, right? But I think for a lot of people, it resonates. And, on so many different levels. But it was a really cool character, and I love that. And I've met Ming-Na Wen. She's wonderful and just she's so gracious. And it was so
Yeah.
cool because it was like the Mulan reunion.
Oh,
I just need to meet Leah now. Like we need to have the full
yeah.
reunion. So it's so much fun. But yeah, it's just so cool to see how there's still continuations of the character through like Lonnie and through when you see,
Hmm.
kind of over time. And so I loved that we have a Mulan connection. I was super excited to meet you and talk to
Yeah.
you more at length. And thank you, of course, to Langley for being so sharing. Because I'm a little bit like, I'm not going to just like tell people, hey, by the way, when I meet them.
It's such a weird, yeah, it's such a weird, it's just the same of like, what have I seen you in? And you're like, gosh, that's the worst question. Like, let's just
Right?
talk like humans
Yes,
interacting like
exactly.
normal people. I don't know. I'll pull up my resume. Like it's just such a weird. So I completely understand. But yes, thank you, Langley, for
Yes, yes.
divulging the information.
I
Yeah.
know. And I want to also just kind of just talk to you a little bit about your background because you grew up in Canada and I know it's like right on the border and I've been to Vancouver, but briefly, and I was wondering
Mhm.
like what the city was like where you grew up. Was there a lot of other Asian Canadians there? Like what was your dynamic like growing up? Because we just talked about how important it was that you saw yourself
Yeah.
represented in this in the Disney film, right? But then, later fast forward to be in the Disney film yourself. But like, what was what was that childhood kind of experience like for you?
Great question. I don't know if I talked about this a lot actually, but my parents immigrated to Canada in the 80s from Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And they were boat people. They were in a refugee camp in Indonesia, and so they set up camp in Canada. And it's so funny because at the time they couldn't, starting from scratch, basically, they couldn't afford living in the big city of Vancouver. So we
Mm-hmm.
actually grew up in a very small town. Well, it's not small anymore. I know people would hate me for saying this, but to me, it felt very small town.
Yeah.
About an hour outside of Vancouver, and it was extremely, and it still is like very religious, very Caucasian.
Okay.
And I grew up like, I think I was the only Asian, like Southeast Asian, within my school. I didn't have any friends growing up. There were like there's a large East Indian or
Okay.
East Asian community,
Mm-hmm.
which was wonderful. But like besides that, it was very Caucasian, and so it was a huge culture shock to me moving to Vancouver, and I met like other Asians. Like I just was, my mind was blown, which is
Yeah.
sounds so silly, but I think being raised by immigrant parents, my parents, I mean, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but they were just like, you need to blend in. And
Mm-hmm.
so kind of not joke, but I grew up very whitewashed, and even the way I speak, and like my partner, Manny, this is like a little bit of a joke, but he's like, I don't even believe that you're Vietnamese when he first met me. I think there's a little bit of a stigma or stereotype with like Vietnamese community in Vancouver, especially like East Van, which is where our community mostly is. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
a tougher area, the way you talk, the way you dress, all those stereotypes. And he was like, when I first met you and I closed my eyes, I could swear you were like a white girl. I'm like, ah! And it's just the way I was raised, like a really, religious small town surrounded by
Mm-hmm.
like working class families. And when I decided to move to Vancouver was when I really started embracing my cultural background. And like
Right.
and especially when I moved to LA, like I could scream it from the rooftops, like how proud I am to be an like Asian Canadian, Vietnamese Canadian performer. But I couldn't say I felt that way when I was growing up. I really
Right.
couldn't. I was just like the black sheep. I didn't understand why I was targeted for whether it's bullying or like looking back. I'm like, I really had no friends. And I'm not going to say it's because I was Asian, but I don't think it helped that I was the only girl who looked different.
Right. Right. No, it doesn't
Yeah.
sound silly at all. And it completely makes sense. I mean, so many people have actually echoed those feelings where they grow up in
not even small towns, but towns in which there's less diversity, right? And just a place in cities where it's a little bit different. I'm in Florida, and so very similar feelings and experiences, even though I was always surrounded by like my family and close knit. But it's like, that one of the things I'm also really passionate about, and I'm sure that like we told you about, we also talked about, was Asian American history or even Asian Canadian history, right? And like just those connectivities of like learning that, immigrants make up the countries that you're in, right? That it's not just everyone there is just Caucasian, even though that seemed to be the majority of where you were. And so like kind of that feeling of other, right? And so like you said, unfortunately, I guess you experienced bullying or just having those feelings, right? And so so was your coping mechanism just trying to blend in, trying to stay low key? And was that kind of what you defaulted to?
Especially growing up. Was just like, don't cause any problems, don't draw any attention. I mean, me being in the arts is such a kind of fascinating turn of events, I think, for my parents being like, why do you want to be, in front of the camera all of a sudden? Like, we've always just been like, blend right in. But yeah, I'm grateful they put me in dance. And so I grew up doing like ballet and like technical styles of dance. And then when I moved to Vancouver, I kind of just figured that was behind me, my dance background. And, and I found this community in Vancouver of dancers, and, a lot of them being like Filipino dancers, or it was just this broad, world that I had no idea, because my parents sheltered us so much from, the outside world of they were just, they raised us, I personally think, in a place of like fear. Right. And unknowing, being in a new country. And so I don't blame them for anything, but definitely when I moved out to Vancouver was I like, okay, I'm trying to figure out who I am as an Asian Canadian woman, as opposed to just like thinking that, anyways, I don't want to go on, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to say anything I'm going to be like, have my foot in my mouth for later, but I didn't grow up embracing my Asian roots.
No. Yeah. And I actually used to feel and say things like, oh, I'm so embarrassed about that. But at the same time, it's like, what you know at the time. And the fact that you're able to kind of go back and look back and say, wow, this was my experience. But because of work that you literally do now, showing on screen like that the world is diverse, and that characters can just be characters. It doesn't necessarily matter, like all of that changes things for the next generation. Like, so other kids growing up in places where there maybe isn't other, ethnicities around them that they're used to, like the work that you do and all of that is really essential, I think, into changing that experience. And so like we grew up feeling that way, because I grew up in the 80s, so I'm a little older than you, but but you think back like, oh, I was embarrassed, I didn't want to have the weird lunch, I didn't want, my name is Mimi Chan and it sounds so Asian, and you just kind of cringe thinking about like that you didn't embrace who you were. But at the same time, I think it's just like, that's who we were because that's what we were exposed to and taught. And it's something I think that a lot of us, like, you're not alone in having to kind of realize like, wow, like this is where I'm at now, but because of these experiences. And so in Vancouver, how old were you when you were there? Was that for college, or was it also for your dance career?
Yeah, I moved out the second I could, like not out of home, but I definitely was like, I miss being at home, but out of the little small town that I grew up in. So I moved out at 18 and convinced my parents to give me like a gap year and to try acting. That little naive girl looking back, I'm like, what did I expect to happen in like a year's time when I would drive from my Abbotsford is where I grew up. I drive from Abbotsford to Vancouver on the weekend to do like one acting course, thinking that I would just like book something and be a star, or I don't know what I expected back then. But after the year, I started dancing for contemporary dance companies in Vancouver while going to school part-time. I didn't go full-time, but I got into business school, so I was doing that, and like acting kind of fell by the wayside because I couldn't fully commit so much effort. I was making making my living dancing as a professional dancer, also teaching dance and then going to school. And it was this weird position that I was in, being like, I kind of sat with the idea that dance was never going to be what I wanted to do with my life. But the cards that I'm being dealt is that, like, this is how I'm supporting myself financially, and going to school. And it really was, I did Descendants while I was in school full time, which was crazy. Like, we shot on Victoria, which is an island, a couple hours away. And I would take the ferry to go do midterms and then come back for rehearsal and then shooting. Like, it was just why, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But it was Vikings, actually, that made me, I'm 4 courses short from my business degree, Mimi. And to this day, during the pandemic, my dad was like, you want to go back and finish school? You want to get that degree? And I'm like, I think that's past. I think that ship has sailed. But it was really Vikings where I'm like, I think I might be able to do this full time. Well, not full time, but like support myself and just take that leap and kind of let that pressure of whether it's parental responsibilities or, I just chose myself. And my love for, it wasn't even love. I think it was a little bit of fear of, like, I don't know what I'm, like jumping in the deep end, this risk, to continue acting. But yeah, it was Vikings that made me move to Ireland, and I was there for 6. And then after that, I moved right to LA, and I've been here since.
Yeah.
It was just, it was, a weird, long way about of trying to finally accept that acting is the real dream of mine.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is such a joy to be able to watch you on screen, and so I'm grateful that you ended up there. But I do want to hear a little bit about your dance background, because as a movement, like, that's what my joy is in movement, and just kind of how maybe you use your dance background in your art, your acting craft, because I do know, like, there's so much that overplays when for my martial arts, people ask, like, how does that kind of go out into the other areas of your life. And so I'm just curious for you, like, what out of your dance background do you kind of bring to your acting craft, if any?
Oh my gosh. Well, so much, like, to this day, I credit my dance experience as like such a big learning, like, place to learn, whether I was a studio dancer growing up. So it's like learning teamwork, learning, like, you have to kind of speak up for yourself and, like, be self-sufficient and all these things that to go on set. I've used dance, or at least movement, in almost every single project that I've been a part of. Descendants, there was singing and dancing.
Yes.
So that's like a no-brainer. In Vikings, there ended up being a little bit of movement that they just had no idea. Let's bring Warrior in. Like, I didn't get to fight necessarily, but when the time came, or when I was training with them, they're like, oh, you have movement, you can pick up choreo.
Yes. Yes.
And there's like projects that, I just finished something that, I just did an episode on Tracker, and in the audition, it said that she needs to be a fighter. I didn't say that I had any experience. I didn't realize I didn't say, but even coming to, and they drop you in the deep end of, like, okay, you're going to come off the plane and literally go into a stunt rehearsal, learn all these fights. And I came back being like, what if I wasn't a mover? What would they have done? I know there's stunt doubles, but, like, they're just putting so much on at me at the time. But I have to say, like, even awareness of, like, people on set, knowing everyone's jobs, what they do, because, it's all one moving machine. I've worked with actors that, like, they just focus on themselves, which is absolutely fine, but they're so unaware of everything going on. And I think as a dancer, you have to be aware, whether it's beats and counts, and I like camera movements. That to me is like, okay, those are other performers coming in at this time. And, like, some people argue, like, you should just be focused on you. And I'm like, okay, you can argue that, but my argument is, like, it's all one dance coming together. And, like, like stepping, I always watching your scene partner and the way they move around the camera. I have to clock that because that's their movement and their choice. I'm always thinking, like, choreography. And I think one day, hopefully very soon, I would love to direct as well. And I feel like that's another step that makes complete sense to me. Like working with the first AD and everything is a moving, a moving piece in the puzzle that just kind of fits all together perfectly. But movement it's been such a big part of like who I am as a person as well. And learning a lot of those things, like I said earlier, just like being self-sufficient, knowing how to take care of oneself on set and not being like kind of a deer in headlights. And it's all based on dance. I think that's what I took away from it, at least.
Yeah, I can completely see that. And you mentioned Manny, which of course I know because I'm a big Good Place fan. So, so of course, but also you did Hip Hop Together, correct?
Yes, we are just two kids from Canada trying to make something of ourselves down here. But we met training in a dance program, which was like hip hop fundamentals and performing together.
So you guys dance together now? Do you guys still bust out the moves or battle?
You know what? I will admit the LA dance scene is so intimidating. You'll never catch me in class, especially because I just feel like everyone's there to like book a tour. Like I just want to like do a little cardio, maybe get a little sweat on. So you'll never see me there, but we'll have fun at home or something. He's a phenomenal dancer.
Yes, really, I believe it.
I mean, he's good at everything he does. But he's a phenomenal dancer. I think he's still, if he could, he would be taking more classes. You'll just never see me in there. It's too nerve-wracking. There's too much pressure here.
I am aware. I had a small moment in time where I thought that might have been my career as well. And it was a very different time, 99, 2000 from now. So I am so thrilled to see the dynamic change.
What a great time in dance. The 90s, 2000s, like 99,
for
2000.
Dance, but I mean in LA for like Hollywood, like that was a different time.
Gotcha.
That was a different time. But for dance, and for movement, and for like you were doing, I know you did concert stuff too, like stage, and you did all the choreography. That's so exciting. I would love to see some videos. I would love to see some footage.
No. No one needs to see that. No.
One of the things I'm always curious about, because especially, in Warrior, right, there are some really intense scenes that in particular, like you've had, as well as all the other characters. But I'm always curious is, do you have like a ritual or an acting prep? Is there like a breathing thing, or because of your dance, do you have like a warm up that you do? Like, what is your kind of like prep for, whether it's intense or not? Do you have kind of a ritual thing or a warm up that you do?
Yeah, that's so funny. I would like to meditate more in life in general, like outside of work. And I can't say that I've stuck to that habit, but I will say whenever I was working on Warrior, because some days are so heavy, when I would be picked up and taken to set, there was always like a 40 to an hour minute drive. And I would always do like a 20, 25 minute meditation, just in the car, really ground myself. And it did set me up for just to be on the right place to set, because, those days are really long. But usually I would do a meditation in season 3, because the stuff was pretty dark in season 3, especially for Mai Ling. I'm so grateful for that season. It was such, it made me work as an actor, which is all I really wanted. I actually did coachings, like private coachings for Mai Ling. Every week I'd meet up with my acting coach. But the funny thing is, and I told him, it wasn't like your typical, it ended up being like therapy sessions for Mai Ling. Like talking through, where her head would be at, why this. And that really prepped me up to do like a little bit more backstory, but it wasn't like breaking down scenes and memorizing and like line reading. It was more like truly I'd come in as Mai Ling and we'd just do therapy sessions, which was really cool. I'd never done something like that.
Oh, I love that.
I don't think he was prepared for that either, because he'd like, let's run lines the next time we meet up. And I'm like, I don't need that. That's okay. this is much more helpful for me. So yeah, that was kind
Well,
of.
she's very different than you as a person, which is
I would
a
hope so.
compliment, by the way. Because I remember when we
I would
spoke in
hope
the
so.
press junket, I'm like, she's so evil and you're so sweet sounding all the time. Like I can't, and it's like Langley. When I talk to Langley, I'm like, oh my gosh. But yeah, I would imagine it's like the technical side I don't want to say mastered, but you know how to break down choreo movement memorization. But I would imagine it's like, okay, how do I get into this kind of a sociopath, like this person that just wants to basically rule the world and whatever I need to do to survive. I think there's a
Yeah.
huge survival theme for most of the characters on Warrior, right? They're out there to just survive, and you can't always fault them. Like Hoon always says, Jonathan Tropper's like, there's no good guys, there's no bad guys. And you can kind of, one minute you hate one character and the next minute you empathize, which is just great writing. But I would imagine you're like, no, I need to therapy out this character because there's a lot going on in her head.
There was moments in season 2, well, 1 and 2, when I would like message Jonathan or go to our writers to be like, are we sure this is where she's going? Because there's no way back from this. It's such a severe consequence or decision that she's making. And I just feel like as an audience member, after this, event, it's like, I don't know how she'll come back from this.
Mm-hmm.
And you never, because, some people say it's always like, it's great to play the villain. I don't think my wing is villain. I still don't, truthfully. I just,
well, she's an antagonist, but I don't know, like you said, if she's the villain.
Sure.
Like, Buckley is definitely the villain.
Crazy, but I love Langley so much.
Oh, wait, sorry. I lost your audio real
yeah.
quick. You said Buckley. Repeat that last line.
Oh, I just said Buckley. I mean, he's a little psycho to me, but I love Langley, and I think he's so incredibly talented, and what he's done with Buckley and like the character, whether it's like the voice and like the posture and the demeanor. Anytime I get a scene with Buckley, mostly in the carriage, we're always in the carriage together. I love my time with Langley because he's so talented. He's so good.
I was going to ask you about your little clandestine meetings that you always have. Like how much off-screen like laughter and like how do you look at him as Buckley? But then because I now have been very fortunate to get to know Langley, like is it weird to look at him as the Buckley character because you're on screen with him, but then, or is it just a switch because you're a professional actor and you're used to that? But his character...
Yeah, I think it's so easy to see Langley as Buckley to me because like not that he's method by any means, but when he's in character, he like stays in character and he like is really adamant on like, as soon as he has the cane, he walks with a little bit of the limp and he's such a professional. And I feel like I didn't necessarily, there wasn't a lot of laughs from my experience on Warrior because all my scenes are so dark. Yes. And like Joe, I mostly work with Joe who plays Leong, and like him and I are just like too like professional. We're quiet. We're just on set. It's like very respectful. And we're just like, we get the job done. We love each other. But like, there's not a lot of fooling around. Okay. And I've been on set with like, I've seen like Jason and Andrew, and I've been on set very briefly, and they just have a ball of a time, like with Chen. And I'm like, this is so different. Like my experience is so different. And same with when Langley, like it's, we come, we get the job done. Yeah. It's in a carriage. It's quick. It's only 2 shots really, because it's such a small confined space. But so I think when I show up, I'm like ready to just like work. But the lovely side of Langley is that he's a Cape Town native. And so he really truly was, I think, the person who really opened up his home for all of us. He was really adamant on, like family lunches and if we can do a dinner. And he showed us Cape Town or what the beauty is of that country. And it just like, he's just lovely. I mean, he just like, he really did add to for the good, our experience in Cape Town. But yeah, I would say like when I was on set, I'm always just like ready to be like, okay, we just have to like, we've got long days and not much time and we just got to get it done.
Down to business.
Yes, exactly.
Well, like you said too, it's like, because like Jason's character, even though it's serious, he's kind of like light and, but you really like, it's so much intensity. And like you said, there's just, that tone of it is different. So I think that's really funny though. You're like, wow, these guys are just playing around and not playing around, but they get laughs and
like the thing that I forget is like, they have the Hopway house with like, they have so many background performers that are there with them all day. So there's like a lot. There's even if they're not fooling around, there's chatter. There's just life.
Right.
Like, and Olivia has, the brothel and there's like, there's patrons. And so it's always loud and like so exciting. And then like Longzi and it's just Myling and Leon, and like our two guys. And so I'm sitting there just like, okay, it's just a very contained set compared to, I would imagine, everyone else.
This is true. I never really thought about it that way, but now that you're mentioning it, like the number of humans on set for those scenes is very different. Like you do have a very, except for like when you're out at the fight or something and everyone's there, like you get to finally be in the thing. But, speaking of the times where you probably said, hey, are we sure we're going to do this? Like, is one of those times where you were like, yeah, go ahead and snap my brother's neck. It's all good. Was that one of the times you were questioning or can you share that? Like one of the times you were
it was definitely that moment. Cause I was like, if Assam, obviously the audience didn't know, but like we knew he wasn't going to die. The lead character isn't going to die in the first season.
Right.
But I'm like, you're really pitting, at what point are we going to come together? Are we ever going to come together? Or is it just, sister versus brother for the rest of the show?
Yeah.
And a point was when I killed Longzi, and I'm like, what's her decision? Like, why?
Yeah. Okay.
If someone's going to kill him, why does it have to be me? Like, it's just like, so, and I got a lot of opinions about when that came out. I heard from a lot of people, audience members, I mean, but there was just a few moments where I'm like, or even, in season 3 with Leon, when I decide the relationship with Leon, it wasn't that I went to them being like, she can't come back from this, but I'm like, if you have her lose Leon, that's it. Like Leon is her only constant in her life.
Yes.
So to lose, and I understood the point of it. They wanted to like strip her bare of everything, like stability in her life. So I'm just looking at my dog. She's fine. She just had major surgery.
Oh.
And so she can't, I'm just making sure she doesn't like lick or get it. Sorry, I'm distracted.
All good.
Yes, but there were definitely moments where I'm like, oh man, Myling, like, what are you doing? Or what do the writers have planned for me?
Yeah. Well, we are dying to know, actually.
You and me both.
We're dying to know. And I have to say, I think that the fans have spoken year after year after year. You are, I mean, I said it on that press junket, and it's just like this show keeps punching back. And I have had so many people reach out to me that weren't fans before, or just weren't really sure. And they've been like, no, we're all in now. And I've been binge watching. I love the show now, because martial artists are a very funny kind of group of humans when it comes to martial arts shows. They're either like, what? Bruce Lee, all in. It doesn't matter what it is. And the other half is leery. They're just like, is it going to be, cheesy? Is the choreography?
Right.
They're leery. They don't want to dive in until it's been vetted. Right. And so at this point, it's been pretty vetted, but even still moving to Netflix, as heartbreaking as it's been to see you guys just tossed around from network to network, moving to Netflix did make it a lot more open to more people. So I think it's been good. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of, positive stuff in terms of like everyone's on board with this. So I'm really hopeful.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you when you're saying like they're a bit leery and they're just like, is it going to be, I don't even do a lot of action. I can't even say I do action. I've just been a part of something that's so, again, I'm biased, but I think the action is so incredible on our show.
Fantastic.
Brett Chan, the whole team. that now when I watch other shows or like movies where I'm like, oh, like I'm just not impressed, or like, oh, they just put action in for the sake of putting something cool and like
Right.
a pop or a moment, or like they're cutting a lot. So the actors probably it's a double, or I'm just so picky now, which I never thought I would be because I grew up loving action. I mean, we grew up, my father raised us on like Bruce Lee movies, Jet Li, Jackie Chan.
Yes. Yes.
And so now I'm a little bit of a snob because of Warrior, and I'll take it.
Of course. No, Brett Chan and team, they're phenomenal.
Incredible.
Yes.
They deserve all the roses.
Yes.
He's just, he was so adamant on making the action. And I think Jonathan as well, obviously, but like making sure that the action was its own character.
Mm-hmm.
I know, I'm sure everyone talked about this, but like the fact that he had the idea that every single character who does fight or movement has their own language in movement, that we're not all doing the same thing and the same syllabus and the same technique. Like every single performer has their own distinctive personality. I love that. And talking about Netflix that you're saying, it's been really amazing. I was a bit nervous. I think everyone else on the cast were so excited for Netflix. And for me, I just didn't want to get my hopes up. I'm like, it's another network.
Yes.
We have been tossed around. We've been canceled a couple times now. And for me, I'm like, okay, like I was just worried that once it hit Netflix, it would just be amongst the other millions of shows and IPs that are on that platform. And lo and behold, like to our lovely surprise, it's been received so well. And I'm so grateful. I always thought Netflix was definitely a more, like, it seemed like a better fit for Warrior.
Okay.
And just in terms of like other shows that they have, it makes sense. Like maybe the viewership will like bleed onto Warrior. And I just feel like we've heard so many great things. And just the fact that millions of more people have now watched our show that didn't know about it even, or heard about it, or didn't have Max before, or Cinemax. So yeah, we don't know what's going to happen.
I know.
We know what we'd love to happen, but at this point, it's like completely out of our hands. We're just, I think for me, I'm just so happy that our writers and creators and, yes, the cast and crew, but everyone else kind of has their moment to shine. Just getting more people, love bombing on the show, which has been nice. Yeah.
Well, it's well deserved. And, I've been a fan for a while. And one of the first, one of the big interviews that I had with Brett was kind of just talking about the action, because of course, as a martial artist and I used to do stunts as well, like a little bit, right. In film. And so like, just the respect for the level. But after talking to him, I really started to realize how special the Warrior family is. Like, I have been on a very limited number of sets in my very small, world of work that I used to do. But it's like, it was so special to just even hear about like the workouts they do all together in the morning and like, just like all the things. But then as I've been so fortunate to speak to so many of the cast members, it is a really, truly unique TV family. Like, I know there's a lot of shows that say, oh, we're like a family and whatever, but a lot of shows you work with who you do, then you go on your way and you lose touch. But it really, the cohesiveness in the Warrior family. And maybe it's because you guys are just like fighting every season to just, whether it's because COVID hit or whatever the next challenge was, you guys have to do it together. But I really feel like there's just a special dynamic, and I'd love to hear like your take on that. I mean, you did mention like in your world, you're in this small, tense set, but it's clear like Lynn Langley hosts, the barbecue at his house or whatever.
Yeah.
And he feeds everyone. And you guys, and Perry's, probably playing some instrument. And it's just such a special dynamic. And I'd love to hear like your take, because you've been on so many sets. You're so, you've been exposed to so many different dynamics. Do you feel that way, that it is a really special Warrior family?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it a few times now, but I really do think like this show is gonna be, for me at least, that like once in a career, once in a lifetime. Just what it means to like, whether the meaning of the show, the importance of this character, but also the family that we took away from it. I feel like I've been on sets where like there's egos or, there's really established actors and everyone has their own process, whether it's, they don't like to hang out with people or, they take time. I think with Warrior, what made it so special is we all came on board. Jonathan set this tone of like, we're all equals here. There's no like movie star. There's no, and because of that, we all met each other at the same place, which is like, there's no one that's better than anyone else. There's no one that like has that power dynamic. And Jonathan set that from the get-go. There's like a no asshole policy, which is so important. Like family, we all have our little hiccups, not everyone's perfect. But then on top of this policy that Jonathan established, Brett then goes and establishes this wonderful like haven, I call it, in season 1 and 2, not so much season 3 because I was very busy working, but in season 1 and 2 and every season he was like, the stunt tent is yours. Everyone is welcome. He sets a workout. In season 3, I didn't go as much because it was 7:00 in the morning. I'm like, I can't do that. I love you, but I'm not going to wake up at 5:30 to get picked up at 6, show up at 7. Like, it's just not who I am. But seasons 1 and 2, it was like 9:30. We work out until noon. We all then travel to the catering. We all grab lunch. Stunt team cast, whoever is available, eat lunch together. Like we are one.
Right.
And he was always there for support and whatever, him and his team, like whatever you needed, you can go to Brett, whether it's like, I don't feel great on this scene, he'll set up times and lessons and privates, like whatever you needed. And so even if you didn't work out, you had to be in production office for like a costume fitting. I would walk to the stunt tent after just to check in. And like, he set up like couches for us. We had like, like fridge and everything so that you can just sit on the couch, watch other people, training and just catch up. Like it really was home base.
Yeah.
And that says like a lot. I've never been on a project like that ever.
I've never been on a project like that. Yeah. I mean, just even the dynamic of the stunt team and the cast, the actors together is that alone is a little more rare. I think that's not the norm for sure.
But for me, I'm like, why isn't that the norm? Like these, especially on a show like Warrior, where like, it's so stunts heavy. It's like, they are the cast, they are, we're all one part of the team.
Yes. That team Brett can make your show or break your show at that point. Because if the stunt team sucked, then the show would not be what it is. So
exactly. Yes. And Brett, like Langley, we, like Sunday brunches. Brett would always have a team brunch on Sundays. Yeah. He's just amazing. Like it really was, if you're not available, he understood. You show up whenever you want. Yeah. And he will accept you as who you are. That was like the overall feeling of the whole cast and crew is like, we just meet each other where we're at and we really are a family. And I feel like I don't know if this will ever happen again for me as an actor and this experience of what this is. Like Andrew is my brother. I call him bruv. He calls me like, we really are. I didn't know Olivia before this. We're both from Vancouver. Crazy that we didn't know each other. And she's forever family. And every cast member, we built these really personal, we go to each other's weddings. Like it's crazy. Yes, like it really is something where a little unheard of.
Yeah. It's very special. It's so cool to watch it, but you can almost
very special
tell, right? Because there's something very special about the way everybody, like you said, a seamless dance on set, like in the show, it's just seamless. And you could just feel this special energy. And it's like the cohesiveness is there, but I love hearing that. And it is interesting because now, I mean, Warrior, started when it did, and there was all these breaks and then COVID and everything. So it's been such a long span of time. And since then, many of you have gone on to do just such even more work. And of course, Andrew's career has really taken off with some of the movies that he's been in. And so, but it's really interesting because I can see that no matter what, when season 4 films, you guys will actually come back to that haven. And I feel like, and I don't know because I'm not around, but like, well, I actually hope to be around. I have to just show up. I've been telling Brett, I'm coming to the workouts for sure. But I was like, I need to have like a moment with you guys because I feel so connected in this outsider way. But like, I feel like you all will come back to that haven, regardless of where everybody is in their career. Fast forward several years later, nobody will come in with like, well, I've been on this movie now. And so I come back to you, Warrior Family, as elevated, right? Like, I feel like everyone will kind of come back and it'll be like a reunion. It's just this really special moment of time that you guys will always kind of have, which is really unique. Mulan.
I'll add to that, like, even when we went back for season 3, Jonathan called all of us individually just to be like, because at that point, you're right, Koji had gone on and he's already working and people were signed on for different shows and or the pandemic and like, who knows where people's heads were at. Right. But he called us all individually being like, is this something that you would even be interested in? Because if you don't want to, there's key characters, but collectively, like if some characters didn't want to come back, there's no show.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he called us individually being like, would you want to? There isn't a for sure, but I just need to like get a head count because there's no point in me like pushing for it if, you don't even want to be on the show anymore.
Right.
And the fact that all of us came back, like there wasn't a missing person I didn't think it was going to happen. I'm like, for sure someone has like another show that's a priority. I can't confirm, but I want to say like people pushed other projects or like, they made it a priority to come back for Warrior. And I think that speaks volumes about what the experience was overall. I mean, it's not an easy show to shoot by any means, but the feeling behind it and the relationships that we've built is beyond, how hard of a shoot it is.
Yeah, very unique, very unique. Well, we're excited to see what happens. And obviously, we're going to keep telling the fans to watch the show, to binge the show, to tag the show, and all the things that we've been doing these last couple months. But we'll keep on that, of course. But what do you get downtime ever? Because I know you're like, oh, I'm shooting here, I'm doing this. I mean, when you get to relax, what is it you like to do other than take care of the doggy?
Well, I was going to say, like, be at home with the dog. I'm based in LA now. Yes. I always try to make it a point. Summer and winter is when we go back to Vancouver.
Okay.
Spring, summer is the best in Vancouver. It's just so beautiful. And then winter break with the family. We don't really get a lot of downtime. I mean, I'm saying that off the heels of a 5-month strike when all we had was downtime.
Right. This is true.
Yeah, it's just about like spending time with family because when we are working, Manny shoots the show in London. I was in Cape Town for years. Like we're always all over the place that if we could just come back together. I also feel like getting older, I cherish my time at home now. Like I look forward to going back to Canada as much as I can for as long as I can just to like hang out with my parents and my sisters.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I told Man, I'm like, I'd love to travel more. We travel so much for work, but when it's for work, we don't get to experience the country.
To have the time.
Or you're just distracted. You're like, you have something else on your mind that you have to do. I would love to travel more. I think this year is going to be a little bit busy, which is great. Mm-hmm. But I'm just home in Vancouver the second I can. My parents called me the other day being like, when are you coming home? I'm like, I don't know.
You're like, I don't know. I don't know about my schedule.
I don't know.
And that's the thing. Langley and I were talking once and he goes, well, the best way to book, the part of a lifetime is to plan a really big vacation.
Go on vacation.
Really big, lavish vacation. And then it'll get canceled because you'll get a call about this show that you auditioned for 8 months ago that went away and suddenly is back or something, and I think he was referring to One Piece at the time when he goes, of course I had planned this thing. And he goes, that's the number one way to guarantee you're going to get a show booking is plan a good vacation.
Is that how that happened for him? Yeah.
I want to say we were talking about it. Like he was like, well,
Yes.
this is how it always works out. Is like, you just never know. But I would imagine also for you and Manny, it's hard because like you said, if you're filming different locations, that must be super challenging to be, you just want to be home when the
Yeah.
stars align time wise.
The funny thing is we're so used to being long distance. Like before the pandemic, we were like at least 6 months always apart. We were
Wow.
all over the place filming. And so we're so used to it that we were, blessed in a way with the pandemic kind of being together.
Yes.
And even this writer's strike was the longest amount of time that we've gotten to be together in one place.
In one place. Yeah.
Which is why, and that happened, just a few months ago where I'm like, that's not good. Like that that there's too much distance between us. But no, we're just, we're grateful to be able to do what we do. And I don't know how long this is going to last. So we're just like, we'll take it as it comes. But we're definitely cherishing the time that we have together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to finally get to talk to you.
You're done?
You're my first female warrior because all the schedules have just not aligned. And I'm like, so Dianne is number one. I mean, the press junket doesn't count. I think I told you guys, I'm like, I felt like I was speed dating the warrior cast. It was so stressful.
That press junket was
I am not good at this.
But it was so well organized to the point where like, even like between interviews, me, Joe, and Langley were like, it just all went, it felt like each of us got a sentence in and it was like, okay, on to the next, and you're moving. And it was wild. So I appreciate you jumping on that and, taking the time.
Yeah, it was great to meet everybody that I hadn't met yet. And I was so fortunate. Every room I went into, I didn't know someone already. So it wasn't like, it was this is my format, like long form, 1 hour. Right. Like you had asked, is it 2 hours? I was like, sure, we could talk for 2 hours. I just don't want to take up your time. But yeah, this is my format. And so I'm like, by the time I start my question, my time will be up. I'm so like, blah, 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 right? I'll go on and on. So it was fun, but it was super stressful. So I was like, I need more time. I want to get to know you guys better and really like hear your story. And everybody, I started this podcast. Everyone has such a fascinating story to tell, regardless of whoever I've spoken to. And it's just been such a privilege to be able to share in these conversations. So thank you so much. And
oh my gosh, thank you.
Is there anything else you want to share, like upcoming projects or anything you want to promote, or is it all secret?
No, I'll just stick with Warrior and say that I appreciate everyone taking the time to binge the show. Please keep binging it if you love it. Spread the word, and we would love to come back. Well, we don't know, but we would love if we could to come back, whether it's for another season or a movie, just to wrap up these stories and these characters that we love so much. But I really do appreciate everyone who's, said lovely things or just shared and continually support the show. So
awesome.
Thank you. Well, and thank you, Mimi, for taking the time. I ramble on and on, so I hope you got something. I hope I answered the question.
You are not a rambler. You are not a rambler. Oh. Very concise, very concise. It was such a pleasure. Hopefully you'll come back and talk to me again. Or if our worlds connect, I'll get to interview you in person one day. So
hey, let's hang out. I'm here.
All right. Until next time.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to The Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.